Yeah, so apparently Secretary Rubio, I think there's a couple other people. I think the Secretary of the Army is out there with him as well, and potentially one more person, but they're in Geneva right now trying to conduct talks with Ukrainian officials and potentially Russian officials over brokering a peace.
Hi, guys.
Which, by the way, this whole thing was a complete crap show because, like, there was so much, and I'll show you. My buddy was talking about it. He did a pretty good job of capturing it. There was a lot of people on X that were essentially talking about it, and so at one point, Secretary Rubio and Tommy Pigott said that the administration maintained that the plan for the Ukrainian peace plan, the 28-point plan, was authored by the United States with input from both the Russians and Ukrainians. And then there were also people that said that it was authored by the Russians without being authorized by the United States or endorsed by the United States, and then they went back on it. So it's like it's really tough to say. Like, representatives were like, this back and forth for the past few days was, having a negative impact on our alliances and our reputation because we were going back and forth and people weren't able to ascertain what the accurate information was. So it was kind of a crap show. So hopefully they got something done here.
All right, we had a very good day today. I think we made a tremendous amount of progress, even from the last time I spoke to you, and I apologize for keeping you waiting, but there was more work to be done. We began almost 3 weeks ago with a foundational document that we socialized and ran by both sides, and with input from both sides. And one of the things that happens when you've been involved in this now for 10 months is you get a pretty good sense of what the priorities and the red lines and the important issues are for both sides. And so that allowed us to create a foundational document, which has been an ongoing working document. In fact, over the last 96 hours or more, there's been extensive engagement with the Ukrainian side, including our Secretary of the Army and others being on the ground in Kyiv, meeting with relevant stakeholders across the Ukrainian political spectrum in the legislative branch and the executive branch and the military and others to further sort of narrow these points. We arrived here today with one goal, and the goal was to take 28 points or 26 points, depending on which version as it continued to evolve, and try to narrow the ones that were open items. And we have achieved that today in a very substantial way. Now, obviously, like any final agreement, they'll have to be agreed upon by the presidents. And there are a couple issues that we need to continue to work on. But I think the report today is that I think today was worthwhile. It was very, very, it is probably the most productive day we have had on this issue. Maybe in the entirety of our engagement, but certainly in a very long time. But work remains, and because this continues to be a working process, I don't want to declare victory.
We said 50 Catholic school kids escaped and being kidnapped in Nigeria. Still 265 students and 12 staff are still held hostage. We're going to have to look into that one.
Or finality here. There's still some work
that's
to
crazy.
be done, but we are much further ahead today at this time than we were when we began this morning and where we were a week ago for certain.
You said about a couple of issues.
Yes.
Remaining. Could you please specify on that?
Well, I'm not going to get into the details on the issues. This is a very delicate moment, and it's important. Like I said, there's not agreement on those yet. Some of it is semantics or language. Others require higher level decisions and consultation. Others, I think, just need more time to work through. As an aside, I will mention that there were items that we were discussing as part of the original 28, it evolved. This is a living, breathing document. Every day with input, it changes. There were some that involved equities or the role of the EU or of NATO or so forth. And those we kind of segregated out because we just met with the national security advisors for various European countries. And those are things we'll have to discuss with them because it involves them. So we sort of really focused on the ones that were bilateral in nature for the most part. So there are a couple, none of it insurmountable. I can tell you that the items that remain open are not insurmountable. We just need more time than what we have today. I honestly believe we'll get there.
Has Ukraine indicated to you that it's prepared to compromise, for instance, some of those key issues like territory in exchange for peace with Russia. They suggested that they are prepared
Well,
to...
I'm not going to, look, it's not because for purposes of evasion, it's just, I'm not going to get into the details of the topics that were discussed because this is an ongoing process. What is important to understand and how these things work is you have to, in order to have a proposal, you have to write it. You know, if it's just verbal, it's in the air. You have to put it down on a piece of paper, and just because it's printed on a piece of paper doesn't indicate finality. So you get input, and based on that input, you make adjustments, and then you get more input, or you make a counteroffer, and you get more adjustments. That's an ongoing process. There's a lot more.
This whole thing has been so convoluted, man. Like it was so difficult for me to tell because apparently the document got leaked to Axios and the Washington Post, and those were the people that leaked out the 28-point plan. And I read through the 28-point plan. There's some decent, like, normal stuff on there, but then there's also some stuff where the Ukrainians are kind of getting shafted because they're basically losing a whole bunch of territory that Russians taken, and they're just basically redrawing their borders, essentially shrinking their country a little bit. Now, some people will probably believe, well, those parts of those territories are mostly Russian, ethnic Russians anyway, and those people tend to lean more Russian. But, you know, there's a lot of Ukrainians that are like, no, that's not the case. So I think the Ukrainians saw it and thought that it was like, you know, obnoxious, like totally obnoxious at one point. But I mean, I hope that they can figure something out, dude, because like there's so many people dying every day over there, man. Like needlessly, there's people literally. I mean, you see videos every day of like soldiers, you know, committing self-deletion, jumping on their own grenades. Just saw a video today of a soldier like pulling the pin on his grenade and laying down on it because he was like over it, a Russian soldier. You know, you're seeing war crimes all over the place, man. I'm seeing like people, you know, taking the lives of POWs and stuff like that while they're laying face down in the dirt. Like insane stuff, dude. Like this has to end. Like the longer wars draw on, the more like barbarism starts coming out because people get tired of conducting themselves professionally because they're just tired of fighting this war. And you know, the sooner they can kind of bring a peace proposal around that they both sides can agree on, I think the better.
More of that to happen. So I'm not going to speculate or go into the details of any of the specific items in the latest version of the proposal because, frankly, by tomorrow or the next day, that may have evolved and changed
probably.
further. And but I can tell you, that I feel very optimistic that we can get something done here because we made a tremendous amount of progress
What are you going
today.
to tell President Trump about the attitude of the Ukrainians during these negotiations?
Oh, it was very positive. I'm telling you, today was the most productive day
He
we
said
have
they were
had.
ungrateful earlier.
Well, today, and we've talked to him since, I think he's quite pleased at the reports we've given him about the amount of progress that's been made. Well, obviously the Russians get a vote here, right? So, I mean, look, we began from the early stage of this process with our understanding of the Russian position as had been communicated to us in numerous ways. At the State Department, we received numerous written non-papers and things of this nature, also verbally, things they've discussed over time and so forth. So it was, no matter what we came up with today, obviously we now have to take what we come up with if we can reach that agreement with the Ukrainian side to the Russian side. That's another part of this equation. You know, they have to agree to this in order for this to work.
What about new deadline? Will be new deadline or it's...
The deadline is we want to get this done as soon as possible. Obviously, you know, we would love it to be Thursday.
Yeah, so there were some people that there also were speculating, or there was rumors floating around that the deadline for signing this peace agreement from that was apparently given by President Trump to Zelensky, which wasn't the case, was supposed to be Thanksgiving. But obviously, they want it to be done as soon as possible, but the deadline is not Thanksgiving.
Thursday, we'd love to, but ultimately the important point today is that we have made substantial progress. We've really moved forward. So I feel very optimistic that we're going to get there in a very reasonable period of time very soon. You know, whether it's Thursday, whether it's Friday, whether it's Wednesday, whether it's Monday of the following week, we want it to be soon because people are going to, between today and the time we deal with this, more people are going to die. More destruction is going to happen.
Yep.
Our goal is to end this war as soon as possible.
They will wait out any treaty or agreement or take it tiny bits at a time. It seems like that's what they want to do. I mean, they took Crimea back in 2014, I think, and then they started taking Donetsk, Luhansk, and all these other places that are on the far eastern side of Ukraine. And now they own, I mean, they like essentially control a large portion of eastern Ukraine. It's not huge, but it's big enough where it's like, okay, maybe, at the end of the day, I think the only way that it's going to work out is if Ukraine cuts their losses on that territory and just cedes the territory and just redraws new country lines. I don't see any other way. And if that ends the war and it stops people from dying, then maybe that's better. I don't know.
Possible, but we need a little more time.
Can you
The what? I'm sorry?
Did you discuss the fighter jets in Poland? It was number.
Yeah, I'm not going to discuss any of the
The
particular.
peace plan reminds you of how they carved up Poland between Germany and the Soviets, death by 1,000 cuts. Yeah. That's why the Polish are so extremely adamant about their borders. The Poles don't mess around at all. In fact, out of every country in the entire European theater, Poland is the one country that has had reduced levels of murder and reduced levels of immigration illegally out of every country in Europe, like legit. So they don't play games because they still have, some horrific memories of those days. And they've been constantly, they've been just steamrolled during every major world war in Europe.
Particulars of it, quite frankly, as I said, this is an ongoing process, and so I think there's work to be done. I know that's deeply unsatisfying to you who have to cover these sorts of things, but I wanted to make you aware.
Russian
that
and treaties don't seem to work out.
I don't want to do anything that sets us back in that regard, and but I can tell you we've made substantial progress. Today was the best day we have had in our entire 10 months of working on these issues.
I certainly hope so.
You met the European representatives today, and what you
Yes, yeah, we met with the national security advisors of a variety of countries that were here, and we sort of walked them through the progress we had made today. We didn't go into tremendous detail. We assured them that items that involve both Europe and NATO directly, or that those items are items that we sort of agreed to put as part of a separate track because it involves input from them. But I think what they heard, and I hope they'll confirm, I believe they will, is an incredible amount of positivity from both the Ukrainian and American side about the progress we've made today.
Yeah, but the problem is if the Russians are not on board, because here's the thing, the Russian economy is being propped up by their war economy right now. And if they stop fighting or they have to stop their military industrial complex, like that's not going to be really good on them, especially because all the sanctions and everything that they currently have on them. So, I mean, they're going to demand a lot. And they're going to not accept unless they get like the fatter end of the bargain, which is just like, bro, come on.
What's the plan for tomorrow? It only makes sense if it includes a provision that says the Americans are willing to provide security guarantees similar to Article 5 of NATO. Are you receptive to this?
Yeah, again, I'm not going to discuss the details of what's being, worked on with regards to any particular provisions. I mean, clearly, I think we all recognize that part of getting a final end to this war will require for Ukraine to feel as it is safe and it is never going to be invaded or attacked again. So that's clearly something that has to be discussed. I think we've made substantial progress on that and other points, but I'm not going to get into the details today about all of it.
Yeah, the security guarantees was like the number one thing that Zelensky was talking about for the entire time that he was at the White House, the most recent time, and the time before that. Security guarantees was the thing he's most concerned about.
I have time for two more, guys, because I got to run some.
Any
The what?
concessions you're asking the Russians to make?
Zelensky in the next hours?
Am I what?
Would there be a call between President Trump and Zelensky?
I don't know. It's possible. I'm not sure.
What happens tomorrow?
Tomorrow?
Yeah, what happens
We
from
keep
here?
working. I mean, look, this process.
here in Geneva?
No. This process has been ongoing now for the better part of 3 weeks, and it's really sped up in the last 96 hours. So we have all kinds of people at technical levels that are working full time on this and engaged in this full time. In fact, even as we got up and broke up now and walked away from the table, there are a handful of technical items that we expect answers from them on or suggestions from them on in the next 24 hours or so. So this is an ongoing process. We don't have to be here in this building for that to move, but we thought today being here in person allowed us to make great strides, because especially since they sent such a high-level delegation who have the authority to sort of call back to their capital, talk to their president, and make and agree to certain things. So we've made a lot of progress.
Can you point to any concessions you're asking the Russians?
The what?
The counter proposals of the European, the counter plan of the Europeans.
I'm not a work counter plan.
Can you
I
point to
haven't seen any counter plan. All right, guys. Thank you.
Can you point to any concessions you're asking the Russians?
I don't know what that even meant. A war counterplan. He's like, what does that even mean? What does that even mean? All right. Well, I hope that they can find. I hope that this can work out. I'm not going to hold my breath. I have a lot of reservations, and I don't have high hopes for it, but I really want to be positive because the war in Ukraine really needs to end. It's just been so devastating for the Russian people, for the Ukrainian people, for everybody that's wasting hundreds of millions and billions of dollars in the area. Like the Ukrainians have the Ukrainians and Russians have been dying at such a rapid rate. It's going to take decades and decades for them to replenish their populations from the amount of people that have died in this conflict. And that's not even including like the cleanup that's going to be massively expensive for the miles and miles and miles and miles and miles and miles of craters, of crashed drones, of unexploded ordnance, of mines, of fiber optic cables from drones. Like it's going to be a freaking mess for a very long time over there. And it's going to cost a lot of money. And plus all of the Ukrainian towns that are basically literally look like something out of the Holocaust movie. Like they look like something out of a post-apocalyptic film where a nuke went off, because like all of the buildings are destroyed, all of everything infrastructure is completely wrecked. Like it's going to take a long time and a lot of money, and I hope that they can get started soon, because the sooner they can stop this war, the sooner they can start rebuilding.